Hello, Grammar World! Okay, today we're talking about verbs, specifically action verbs. So a verb, as you can see by your definition on the screen here, is a word that expresses its subject's action or state of being. And this possessive its is really important because when you're looking for different parts of speech in the sentence, the subject and the verb are the places where you have to start. And if you can find the verb, then you can find the subject. If you can find the subject, then you can find the verb because they are linked together. It's subjects. So, therefore, that's why the verb is so critical a part of speech to understand. Now, an action verb is one that expresses either physical or mental activity taken by the subject. So the action verb is going to be the action that propels the sentence forward. It is going to be the thing that the subject did that everything else reacts to in the sentence. So the action verb plays a very strong role in the sentence. So let's look at some. The owls hooted all night. And so we can tell what the subject is, owls. That's what we're talking about. And what did the owls do? They hooted. All right, so that makes that the verb. That is the thing that the subject is doing. She thought about the problem. And so what is the subject here? She. And what did she do? She thought. So we have subject and verb. Now, here's a little trick. When you are looking for a part of speech in the sentence, and it's a single part of speech, it's not a phrase or something like that, you can often take out prepositional phrases from the sentence, and it quickly reduces the number of words in the sentence, makes it a lot easier to find what you're looking for, especially if it's a single part of speech. So she thought, suddenly there's two words in this sentence, and suddenly one has to be the subject and one is the verb. I believe you, but question my sanity. Now, in this case, we have two verbs. Well, let's start with the subject, I. We can look on down and there's no other subject here. Believe, I believe, that is one thing am I doing. And then question is the other thing that I am doing. Both relate to this one subject. So subjects can have a compound verb. You can have someone doing more than one thing in a sentence. And but once you find that subject, then finding the verbs makes it a lot easier. Or if you just found one verb, believe. Who or what is believing? I. That's the subject. And then you hit question, who or what is questioning? Well, that's also I. So that makes it a little easier to figure things out if you can find the verb or the subject. So let's keep going on. With all the power he could muster, he sang with joy. Now, this is a longer sentence, and a student may have some difficulty because the subject doesn't begin the sentence. But going with what I told you before, if we decide to take out the prepositional phrases, with all the power, right? And then we could take out with joy. Suddenly we have he could muster, he sang. So we have he is one subject, and then he is another subject. Could muster is the verb, and we will see that when we start talking about helping verbs, that this makes this entire thing a verb phrase, which means it is acting together as the verb. And then he sang. So we have a verb here. Suddenly, by taking out those prepositional phrases, it becomes very easy to find what you're looking for. And especially if you can find subject or if you can find verb, you can find the other one. So, dancing with a partner requires consideration. What's the subject here? What is the thing acting as the thing that's driving the whole sentence forward? So, perhaps a lot of students would say dancing, verb, right? That is, because that is what most people think of as a verb. The problem is that in this case, if I looked at this other thing, requires is also a verb. So I'm looking at these things and say, well, which is it? Dancing? Who or what is the subject of this sentence? And if I take out that one, if I took out this prepositional phrase, with a partner, suddenly dancing requires consideration. Well, dancing, in this case, is the thing that requires consideration. And suddenly that becomes the subject. Dancing requires something, consideration. And it becomes a lot easier when you isolate those words out. This dancing is the thing that requires, right? Therefore, those two things are interrelated. She leaped across the goal with her enemies on her heels. So, again, let's try taking out the prepositional phrase. Across the goal with her enemies on her heels. Suddenly, she leaped. That's all we're left with. Subject, verb. Okay, let's do a recap. Now, when you're dealing with action verbs, again, you're dealing with verbs. Verbs are going to be related to the subject. They're going to be connected to the subject. And if you can get rid of, so we say, verb is connected, I'll just do that, and subject are always going to be together. And if you can take out prepositional phrases, then it will isolate the subject and the verb. And an action verb, in this case, is the action that the subject is doing. So if you find the subject, you can figure out what the subject is doing by finding the verb. Or if you find the verb first, you can find out what that action is connected to. It's going to be connected to the subject. So, very important part of speech.